carried away here. Let's just turn it over to Trent.
Thank you, Taylor. Let me get my screen shared here real quick. All right, that should be shared. Can you guys all see that?
Yes.
Roger.
Cool. Let's just dive right into it, shall we? So these numbers are for May 2021. For all that you don't know, our stats are a month behind. So these are for May 2021. As you can see here on this first slide, this red number is the 2021 numbers. Total active listings come out to 3,376, which is just over half of what they were in 2020, and just under 50%, closer to 40% actually from 2019. So as a lot of you know, this time last year, there was far fewer listings than we were expecting because of a pandemic that we were going through. And it's just interesting to me to see this number still as low as it is. That's partially the reason the real estate market is as competitive as it is. Here we have new listings for May 2021. So this is all the new houses or properties brought to market. There's 3,971, which is higher than 2020, which is a good thing. But still far fewer than 2019 when we were starting to get into the pandemic. Pending sales, and this is something that I wanted to point out. So pending sales are actually up from the previous 2 years. 2020, like I said, there was a lot of people uncertain of the current market and what was going to go on with the pandemic. And so we saw a lot of people not list their properties, as you can see in this green line here between March and May 2020. 2019 was still a quote unquote normal time. And we still have a lot more pending sales, and we're starting to see that uptrend like we see in typical years where spring and summer months are usually the time of year to sell a property. Whereas in 2020, we saw an inverse of that trend. Here we're looking at closed sales. So these are closed sales over the last 5 years. Red is also indicating 2021. One thing I wanted to point out here is we're starting to see that uptrend. So pending sales numbers are going up. Closed sales are going up month over month, which is a good thing. And the closed sales for May was 3,183. Again, looking at 2020, we actually saw a downward trend in the March to May. Whereas typical years, if you look at years past, we saw uptrends for actually all of the other 4 years prior to 3 years prior to 2020. This is one thing that I'm sure a lot of people have heard about. The average and median sales prices of homes has absolutely skyrocketed over the last really year. If we're looking at May 2020, right in here, you'll see a steep incline in both the average and median sales price. Median is up to 490, which is also something to note. I'm sure you've all heard stories of people paying $100K over asking with no inspections and all that good stuff. Here's some hardcore data just to back it up. And then also you've heard stories about houses closing in 3 days cash. Here's more data to back that up. Whereas we see the red number here again for total market time in 2021 is 22 days. Whereas in 2020 and 2019 was up closer to 40 and 50 days respectively. This is something that absolutely pains me to talk about because since November, we haven't seen inventory data over 1 month of inventory. Again, this is another thing that across the United States, inventory is just low everywhere. I don't know other markets numbers, but 0.7 months of inventory in May is incredibly low. Again, just as a refresher, a balanced market is usually 6 months of inventory. Anything below 6 months is considered a seller's market. And anything above 6 months is considered a buyer's market. We haven't seen a quote unquote buyer's market for quite some time. And what 0.7 months means is if we had no new listings at the current rate that properties are closing and sales are being recorded, we would run out of inventory in about 3 weeks. All right, here's just kind of a summary of those numbers I talked about. One thing to note, May of last year to May of this year, the median sales price is up 21.2%. That's quite a big jump if you ask me. Average sales price up 24.5%. So again, we've all heard those stories on people paying way over asking and closing in 3 days, yada, yada, yada. Again, these are just hardcore numbers to back it up. The other thing I wanted to touch on is total market time is actually down 42%. So going back to that slide, total market time is 22 days right now, whereas in 2020, it was closer to 40 days. All right, get into the small multifamily statistics. These are properties that are 4 units or less in the Portland metro area. Median sales price for May is $649,900. April was $538. I do want to point out that there is kind of an outlier here in the other category, and that sold for $950. So I think that's kind of skewing the median sales price numbers a little bit. The other thing to note is the total number of multifamily properties that were sold. So we dropped 16 total properties from April to May. I don't know if they're all bought up or if people just aren't selling right now, or if those properties are being sold off market and not being thrown into RMLS. It's hard to say, but there was a pretty significant drop in the total number of small multifamily properties sold. And then the last thing I'll touch on is the days on market. So with single family homes, we saw total market time right around 22 days. With small multifamily, that is down to 24 days from 42 days on market average. And then you can see the median dropped over 50% down to 6 days, which is pretty incredible if you ask me. So market is definitely still strong and definitely still active. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. I'll give it back to Taylor.
Thank you, Trent. Those are some very wild numbers.